So when this conflict started, we already had in place a gigantic machine where the CIA is working with the Ukrainians to spin this data. And the one thing about spinmeisters is they have to know what their objective is, which means they have to know what reality is. So the CIA knows exactly what the truth is on the ground. Their job is now to shape perception so that the truth is either highlighted where it needs to be highlighted or suppressed where it needs to be suppressed. So we have absolute insight into the thinking of the Ukrainian government.
Welcome to Redacted Conversations. I'm Clayton Morris. On this show, we invite journalists, whistleblowers, and experts on to talk about subjects that are largely ignored by the mainstream media. My guest today is Scott Ritter. He's a former United States Marine Corps intelligence officer. He served the United Nations implementing arms control treaties. Ritter was also the UN weapons inspector who broke the news that we found no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which of course was the entire reason for invading Iraq. That war killed millions of people. Here's the moment that Ritter sat before the United States Senate, and then Senator Joe Biden, with maybe more brain cells at that time, actually mocked him for this information and told him that going to war was above his pay grade. Watch this moment.
Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power is not enough. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
Scott Ritter joins me now on the show. Scott, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for giving me that indigestion this early in the morning.
So it's a walk down memory lane. It's uncomfortable for me to even watch that, to see what you're bringing before the United States Congress. And to sit there and to watch this propaganda machine, this complex, mock you in that way. Can you take me back to that afternoon?
Well, sure. I had just resigned. This hearing was on September 3rd, and I had resigned around 10 days prior to that. And so to be invited to speak before a joint session of the Senate Armed Forces Committee and Foreign Relations Committee. They had never met in joint session before. So this is literally making history. And for me, who is somebody who had avoided the spotlight as a weapons inspector, my job wasn't to be a media star. My job was to carry out inspections and stay out of the media. To suddenly be thrust into this grand stage. I'm somebody who takes the Constitution very seriously. I take government very seriously, and this was a huge deal for me to be able to testify before the U.S. Senate. And I was warned ahead of time that this was going to become a very partisan political battle. And I was also warned that Joe Biden has a tendency to make things personal, and that my best option would be to just sit there and shut up while he speaks and not say anything. And if you look at my face, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just sitting there and shutting up. What I will say is this: he made his points that they were political. He was not happy with the hearing, not happy that I was being brought forward. It was originally intended that Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State, and William Cohen, the Secretary of Defense, would testify with me. That would be three of us on the stage. They refused because they knew that I knew what I knew. And what I meant by that is, I wasn't some outsider. I had been to the State Department. I had been to the White House. I had been to the Pentagon. I had been in all the briefings. I was the insider. I knew everything. And so they couldn't sit there before the Senate and lie and spin that I would be there like the conscience they didn't want to admit they have, and remind them, no, you said this on this day. No, you said this on this day. No, you guys promised this on this day. No, you're lying, Madam Secretary. You're lying, Mr. Secretary. And so they opted out. Biden wanted to cancel the whole hearings. He didn't want this to just be a stage where the Clinton administration would be attacked. My job wasn't to attack the Clinton administration. My job was to remind the United States Senate that back in 1991, they had supported a Security Council resolution calling for the disarmament of Iraq. and now the U.S. government was preventing the inspectors from doing their job. And I was holding that up to them. I was the mirror holding their own words, their own promises, their own guarantees in their face. And Biden was uncomfortable about it. It was a tough afternoon. I've never been, I've operated at fairly high levels, but never in such a contentious environment before. So it was a unique experience for me. I will say this: Biden was attacked heavily by the media, by everybody afterwards. He went over the bound. He was rude. He made it personal. And he had to write. He wrote an op-ed apologizing, and then he invited me back to his office. A couple weeks later, we spent about an hour on a one-on-one discussion. He wrote me a nice letter afterwards saying it was a great discussion, and that this was an issue that was going to continue to be of importance. And he had hoped that I would be able to talk with him in the future. Well, guess what, Joe? I tried talking to you in 2000, 2002. You didn't want to talk. Joe Biden doesn't want to talk. Joe Biden doesn't want to learn. Joe Biden doesn't want to have a conversation. Joe Biden wants to own the stage and chastise people, dictate to people, pontificate. That's who Joe Biden is, but or at least that's who he was back then. But that was an interesting afternoon. I learned a lot about the U.S. Senate and how it operates, and about the politics behind the grand stage that's presented to the American people.
Well, we're seeing another grand stage that's being presented to the American people right now. And I've talked to a number of individuals who've been inside the government, former intelligence officers, et cetera, who've said they currently, and I'll get you to weigh in on this, give me your perspective, what we saw then, manufacturing consent for war in Iraq, in some ways pales in comparison to the propaganda that we're seeing in the war in Ukraine. Now, I'll set that out there and tell me, maybe it's just the prevalence of social media, et cetera, but what sort of similarities do you see in the run-up to the war in Iraq and then into the run-up to the war in Ukraine?
Well, I think you touched on it with what the two words is social media. Back in 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have, I can't remember if we had Facebook or not. But the way you got your information was via television, via radio. You could either watch, 24-hour news. You could watch the big three: ABC, CBS, NBC. You could tune into C-SPAN and get the actual hearing if you wanted to watch that. But it took a little bit of effort for the American public to access information, and because it took effort, I think the American public was more discerning, meaning that those who were seeking to manipulate, manufacture, misinform had to actually work at it. They had to go through the motions of trying to be responsible, trying to be objective, trying to get data out there. Telling the lie and selling the lie wasn't as easy as it is today. I think that the lies that were told back then were very complex lies, and in ways it makes what they did much more nefarious, because it required an effort to distort information, to manufacture consent as we speak. Today we have the best we can hope for in terms of quality news is a 24-hour news cycle which delivers the antithesis of quality news. It's entertainment. It's reactive. It's not proactive. It's not informative. It's designed to catch your attention, hold your attention for 30 seconds, 3 minutes. And then we supplement this with social media, with Twitter, with Telegram, with YouTube, with Facebook, with whatever platforms people use. And it's instant gratification, instant information, instant analysis, which means that you can be instantly lied to, instantly manipulated. Data can be instantly manufactured. There's no effort. And we see this. With this Ukraine thing, there's two things that have stood out to me. One, The National Security Council has admitted that they have deliberately declassified intelligence information so it can be released to the public, even though they know the intelligence information being released is wrong, inaccurate, not fully developed. They're releasing it not to inform people, but to shape perceptions. And then we get even more shocking when General Nakasone, the head of the National Security Agency, says not only does he immediately declassify and release information, he releases it specifically to CNN so that they can immediately shine a light on an issue. This means that CNN, a ostensible news network, is literally nothing more than an extension of the American intelligence community, which we now know is not in the business of informing policymakers, but misinforming American citizens. That's literally what they said they do. They misinform us to create perception, not to discuss reality. That's the big difference. Back in the day, they had to work to tell the lie. Now they just lie. They admit they're lying, and there's no consequence. The American people are silent on this. Literally, this is one of the biggest issues that it is a frontal assault on democracy. Democracy is about an informed citizenry that can hold their elected officials accountable for what they do in their name. But when your elected officials just right up say to your face, we're lying to you. We're lying to you. We expect you to swallow the lie. We expect you to accept the lie without question. And the American people sit there and do that. They're just saying, okay, you're using CNN to feed us lies. Okay, it's not okay.
It's disgusting. And you talked about the sanctity of the Constitution, which what's left of it at this point? I mean, you see literally this deep state. I mean, we throw that term around. I think it absolutely exists. And
it exists.
You know, I mean, as you point out, they're literally handing. I mean, back in the day, we talk about this on the show a lot, back in the 70s, right? The CIA, the military industrial complex itself used to try to infiltrate newsrooms nefariously, right? And now they're literally on the payroll at CNN and MSNBC. General, we want to bring in General Wacha to get your perspective. And every time, and we play clips constantly here on this show, that every time they bring a general on to, well, we need to keep sending more weapons. We need to keep them in the fight. So it's constant manufacturing consent for war. And now they're on the payroll at CNN. They're not even trying to nefariously infiltrate the newsroom. They're being paid by these guys.
The generals, the former intelligence analysts, and it's a revolving door. I mean, look in the case of John Psaki, the press spokesman for the White House. She was a CNN paid talking. First, she was state